We all know why we're here. We're here to talk about two things: garbage and the purest water in the world, and how we keep them apart forever. Maybe the end result would be a moratorium, at least, on this dump site, right?
North Simcoe landfill site number 41 has been my address now for 77 days. Welcome everybody to our traditional and cultural territory that we now share as a part of humanity with all of you. So miigwech for taking part today. Right now, I'm going to speak a little bit later, but right now I'm going to call up Essaunce-Lamarche, who is also one of the women who have been camped out at Site 41 for 77 days. Bonjour, wana bonjour. Min wabakwe indigenous cause, wabasheshi indo dem. Namena masing indon jiba. Ojibwe Anishinaabe kwe indao, medekwe. My father's family comes from a place called, that the elders call Sturgeon Island, and some people call it Christian Island. My clan is Martin clan, and I've learned through my teachings with the grandmothers and the grandfathers a little bit about my role as Anishinaabe Kwe and the water, and how it connects to how we're camped across from dump site 41. On May the 4th, we were invited to get involved in the walk from Elmvale out to the dump site. Many of you may have been there. It was a wonderful day for a walk. Yes. Our grandmother Gloria King did a water ceremony at the spring along the highway there, and then several of us women carried that water in a copper vessel out to the site. And when we got there, we met some amazing people like Steve Ogden. Anne Mard Barlow. Up until this point, the dump site 41 in my mind had been an issue of garbage and not water, and listening to them speak just reawakened my role as Anishinaabe Kwe, and I've been asked to talk about that. In our culture, women are responsible for the water, and men are responsible for the fire. We have that balance. And women are responsible for the water through our role as life givers. Water is life. Water flows throughout our Mother Earth and gives life. Women give life. It's also connected to our role with the moon. Grandmother Moon has a direct relationship over the tides of the water of the earth. Women share a cycle with our grandmother Moon, and so through this connection, we have this special relationship with water. As life givers, when that child is in our womb, that child is that baby, that fetus is surrounded by water, and that's that water protecting that child. When that baby is born, the first thing that clears that way for that baby is that water. So women have this very special, unique relationship with water. And we know that if our water is not protected, if our water is not clean and pure, that our life, we will compromise the life that we are bringing into this world. And so that is why when we recognized that this was an issue of water, that the Anishinaabe decided that we needed to do something. So on May the 5th, we started talking about setting up a camp across from the dump site. And so Friday, May the 5th, we set up our tents. We got a sacred fire going, which our elder Leon King lit for us, and our firekeeper Johnny Hawk has been taking care of. I'd like to ask Johnny to come on up and speak. Thanks.
Bonjour, KK Kans, Dijna Kaz, Mang ne Dodam, the Mabin Sing, Dijna Kaz, Ogitchata Nishnabe, Nini, and Dao. Thanks for welcoming me to come up here and speak here and making me feel welcome in your community as well. Shelley was talking a bit about, in our culture, the role of women with water. In our culture, it is our men's duty to care for that fire. We have a sacred fire burning there. That's where we do our ceremonies. That's where it starts when we're a little boy to a man. Part of those responsibilities is to care for that fire, make sure our people, our family are taken care of, safe, make sure we provide for them, well fed, make sure our territories are protected from any kind of threats. So we're just there to, as men, to all men. It's not just natives. We're talk about that unity. That's what this flag means. This talks about unity. One nation under one sun. That's what this flag means. And it's a beautiful thing what's happening here. And past times when our people have stood up against injustice, the government or police have always been in there to divide us. And that's not happening here.
We've been camping out across from Site 41 for 77 days. I read an article in the Midland Mirror where Tony Georgia said we have allowed them to protest in private farmland. Well, you know what, Tony? There was nothing you could do about it anyways. So when we got on board with Site 41, I had no idea what I was signing up for. I hadn't been camping in 8 years, and I'm the only one who walks around at Site 41 in 2-inch heels. So, with that, I want to talk about a little bit about some of the things that we've been doing. Not only have we been protesting at Site 41, but we have recently, with the help of Bruce Stanton, sent out a petition to the Federal Minister of Environment for a 13-month environmental assessment on Site 41. Started a letter campaign and sent out over 700 letters to John Garretson, Dalton McGuinty, and Stephen Harper to stop Site 41. Our First Nations women in Rama relentlessly pursued the David Suzuki Foundation to come forward and make a formal opposition to dump Site 41. And we have David Suzuki has written a letter to Dalton McGuinty to stop Site 41. Ontario, who have publicly stated now they are in opposition to dump Site 41, along with Regional Chief Angus Toulouse and AFN former candidate John Bocage, who have both visited the site. We have also successfully got on board nationally the National Native Women's Association of Canada. me because apparently they have an injunction against me. They have also stopped dewatering at 810,000 liters a day. And if you have noticed, what happens when you pump water out, it comes down as rain. So this is Mother Earth giving it right back to us. With Rob McCullough one day, and they're passing around a little bit of a video of me talking to Rob McCullough, how I said I wouldn't let him go into Site 41 at Gate 2. And he says, "Vicky, take down your blockade." I said, "No, over my dead body." So, a little bit of a message to the county of Simcoe. You can slap as many injunctions on me as you want. You will not shut me up about Site 41.
Amazing bunch of people. We represent a lot of different kinds of walks of lives. We're from far and wide. The last protest we had people from Lewiston, New York join us as well because they'd heard about this and wanted to add their voice to it as well. I'd like to introduce you to Judith Grant. And she and her people have as well a huge concern about what's being prepared at Dump Site 41, and she's the president of the Federation of Tiny Township Shoreline Association. So let's hear from her.
I was asked to welcome everybody here. I think we've all been thoroughly welcomed. And just to say that the history of opposition to this dump site is long-standing. And it began with the farmers in the immediate area. And they have been at it since the late 80s. There have been a series of groups in town. We sort of became aware of it in the 90s and started writing about it and writing letters about it. But what's offensive about it is that our understanding of what the dump site could mean and what its hazards are have expanded in that period of time. So it started out with us worrying about whether or not there was going to be enough water for the farms around to use because of the theory of the dump site. Then we began to grasp, as they did groundwater surveys, that this could affect a lot of groundwater. Then we became aware, because of what was happening with the Posey dump, of just how extensive the damage could be to groundwater. And recently we began to grasp that there are ways that this dump site can actually affect Georgian Bay. Part of what's not being sort of thought about is the impact of climate change, which we all know is coming, and there's a very elaborate theory of how this dump is going to work, but it doesn't seem to have dealt with the new understanding of the broader climatic issues. I'd like to draw attention to the Council of Tiny Township, 4 of the 5 of whom are here, and all 5 of whom voted in favor of having a moratorium, and that's what we're hoping to achieve. And we'll just have the councillors, wherever they are, stand up. There's one. We've got Peggy, Breckenridge, George Lawrence, Andre Clare, George Cornell, and the one who's not here had to be at a wedding. But he would otherwise have come. We also have with us Garfield Dunlop, our MPP. And Bruce Stanton, our MP. Now, in addition addition, we asked all of the county councillors who have a chance to vote on this issue, we hope, at the next meeting of county council, if they would come to the rally and actually hear some of the concerns that we have about the dump site. And we understand that Mr. Hope is here, Tony Hope. And I encourage any of the others. I had a note from Ms. Cox, opposed the dump site in the last vote, just to say she was sorry she couldn't be here. But we're very much hoping that all of those county councillors will rethink it. And if you have contacts with any county councillor, like if you have friends who live in another municipality in Simcoe County, then tiny, because we know that we are against it, we urge you to get in touch with people you know who might have influence with other county councillors, or that you yourself could get in touch and just say, we need a year to take a look at the theory of this dump site and the fact of it and decide whether this is the right thing to do. So we encourage you to get out there and work.
A number of politicians have been with us in this fight. A number haven't too, of course, and they're the ones we're still working on. And there have been a number of other dump site issues as well. Perkinsfield is a perfect example, isn't it? It's kind of appropriate, I think, that we would reconvene here because of the rain, because, of course, Perkinsfield is the home of the Posey Plume. That's another dump site that went wrong, and a number of plumes have come out from it and are heading towards Georgian Bay, of course. That's the flow, the underground flow of water. So obviously what we're trying to do is make sure that under no circumstances that would ever happen again. The other dump site issue goes back almost as far as dump site 41, and it's the Adams Mine. You remember that, right? Well, the Adams Mine issue, after a long, long battle, was won by the people. The Ontario government was compelled to pass the Adams Mine Act, which had ramifications for that dump site and certain ramifications for other dump sites that might come along. One of the men who was front and center in that fight is Charlie Angus. He's the New Democratic MP for Timmins, James Bay, and he's with us today. Charlie, come on.
Well, I gotta say, you do not look like a bunch of radicals to me. In fact, you look like my neighbors. And the thing about neighbors is you believe that when you've got trouble that you can call on your neighbors and they're going to be there to help you. That's what neighbors should be there to do. And I'm seeing neighbors from all across the region who are out here. And then I hear that there's certain neighbors of yours who aren't here. The people who put you in this position. Yeah. The decision you make today is whether you're going to sit back and allow this to carry on, or you're going to take control of the situation, and the neighbors who put you in it and who are responsible have to be held to account. So, you know, we fought 15 years to stop the Adams Mine scheme. And that scheme was that, well, there's nobody living up in Northern Ontario except people who look like you and me. And they've got all these big abandoned iron ore pits that have huge fractures through them. And the fact that groundwater is flowing through them, well, that's not a bad thing. We'll make that a good thing. And the first thing you learn in a dump fight is it doesn't matter whether the ground is good or bad. It doesn't matter whether it's safe or it's not. They'll make it sound safe once they've got you in their sights. That's how site processes happen. That's how the consultation process happens. That's what's happened to you. And that's what happened to us. Where they came out and they told the government of Ontario that 350 million litres of groundwater a year would flow on that garbage. They wouldn't even need a liner. Because this was so good, the groundwater would wash the garbage clean. And in fact, after 20 years, they would walk away from it, and that groundwater would have to continue cleaning it for another 1,000 years. That's how crazy the Adams Mine scheme was, and they almost succeeded. And the only reason they didn't succeed, and that's the reason I'm here, and that's the reason I got into politics, is that we learned almost too late that the process is not there to protect your interests. That's the fact. There is nothing radical about that statement. The Ministry of Environment is not there to protect your interests. All the consultants that they hire are not there to protect your interests. And the computer modelings that they won't even show you are not there to protect your interests. If you trust in the process, you will have a dump and you will live with it, and it'll be here hurting your environment for eternity. That's if you trust in the process. So I'm here to say, you have a decision to make. You have to change the rules of the process. You have to take the steps to ensure that due diligence is done, because due diligence was not done on Site 41. That's the first step you have to take. And there is something profoundly wrong with the way that this system works, that your neighbors and yourselves are being threatened with legal action for just making a simple statement. That if this site is so good, if this site is so perfect, then we don't want to trust computer models, because we know what a computer model is. A computer model will tell you anything you pay it to say. That's what the computer models are. If this site is as good as they've tried to tell you for 30 years and they haven't done a very good job, then they can wait just another couple years. And they can prove it. And they can prove it to the satisfaction of the people who live here. Because it's not just the fact that it's your backyard. You are responsible for this land that you are living on. And this land has to be looked after, because in the 21st century, you do not roll the dice with groundwater. That's not happening. So I just want to say that when I heard about what was happening here and I saw the abuse of the process that's taken place, I didn't feel there was any other place I could spend a Saturday in the summer than coming to wish you well in the fight, because you are going to win this fight, because you have right on your side. So the steps that you take from here is about winning. And if it seems hard now, and I have to tell you this, if it seems hard now, if you roll over, your nightmare has just begun. So you have a responsibility. You know what you have to do. You are going to make your officials and your politicians and the bureaucrats of this province, they're going to have to start listening to you. Because you people are not being selfish. You people have the interests of your region and your community and your future at stake, and you're going to be at the table when that decision's made. So keep up the fight, and we're going to win this one.
Thank you, Charlie. This fight has been around almost as long as the original Adams Mine fight. It goes back some 20 years or more. There are a number of you here who know all about that. I like to think of Dump Site 41 as similar to that old, silly black and white movie called The Head That Wouldn't Die. It was a horror movie. Well, this is the dump site that won't die, right? The people who know about that most are people who have been working away day by day. This issue has taken over their lives. It has taken over a number of lives.
Let's be polite, everybody.
Well, look at this. Isn't this fantastic? Look at all of you here today. Job well done. I gotta tell you, and I first of all want to send a great Simcoe North welcome to my colleague in the House of Commons here, Charlie Angus from Timmins James Bay. Don't you think that was great? As Vicky said earlier, one of the things that we're working on, and one of those things is a petition to the Federal Minister of the Environment. Charlie, and I missed the last part of what Charlie had to say, but one of the initiatives that they did at Adams Mine was to do exactly what we're doing right here on Site 41. And that is to get that petition in play. It was the Temiskaming First Nation that actually started that process in the year 2000, and it was successful. It was one of many things that was brought to the table to help stop the process, to bring further doubt into a process that was on the cusp of becoming a reality in the community of Adams Mine and Kirkland Lake in that case. So we're working on that angle. We've got some other things that we're working on as well. As I've said before, this has been an issue that has not been as easy as perhaps it would be in the provincial realm, but we're scouring every piece of legislation that we can, every avenue that we can to get this to the policymakers so that we can have a say, shed more doubt on this process, and get this thing shut down. So I appreciate all the support and the advice and the counsel you've been giving me along the way, and I'm happy to do whatever I can to move this, to get it stopped before it opens in the fall as they're proposing to do. Thank you very much.
Organization spreading around the world called Waterkeeper. It was begun a while ago by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It focuses on water issues, threats of pollution, supply of water. And Mary Muter is here. She's the Georgian Bay Waterkeeper. She's also the president of Georgian Bay Forever, and she is part of that alliance. And let's bring her up here and hear what she has to say. Mary?
Some tough acts to follow. Georgian Bay Forever is the new name of our organization, a registered Canadian charity that undertakes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
That undertakes research and education projects with a focus on aquatic ecosystems. Okay. It is our organization that identified the 10 billion gallons per day leak of water in the St. Clair River. But today I am here as the Georgian Baykeeper. And we are members of the Waterkeepers Alliance, started by Robert F. Kennedy. I know that if Bobby Kennedy was here today, he would be saying, "Is Simcoe County crazy?" Have you not learned from Walkerton? This dump will eventually leak into local groundwater, and sending the contaminated leachate into a Georgian Bay sewage treatment plant is unacceptable. There is a creek right near Site 41 that drains into the Wye River. Any breakdown in the proposed complex system to contain the leachate will end up in the river and Georgian Bay. This site is set up with 1950 mindset, but this is the 21st century. We now have far better ways of dealing with our garbage than excavating and pumping out cold, pristine water in order to fill a very large hole with garbage. The liner that is going into the hole has only a 2-year guarantee. We all know that it is only a matter of time before it leaks. There are only questions about how soon, how much, and what contaminants will leach out. The garbage they produce, they say, will produce approximately 10 cubic meters of contaminated leachate sludge every day. Currently, there are no regulations or methods to safely dispose of medications that end up in our garbage, including antibiotics and hormone disruptors found in human medications. That leachate will contain, at a minimum, pharmaceuticals, including antibiotics and birth control hormones. We all know about antibiotic-resistant diseases, and we know about male frogs and male fish developing female reproductive systems due to the exposure to human birth control hormones. So guess where this leachate is going to go? Midland Sewage Treatment Plant has wisely turned away Simcoe County's request. Listen, the latest news is that the town of Blue Mountain is willing to accept this. So that the pharmaceuticals and other unknown contaminants will go right through a sewage treatment plant into Georgian Bay. Does this make sense in 2009? No. Do we really want to accelerate ecological harm to precious aquatic ecosystems? I just heard yesterday that some of the ratepayers around Blue Mountain are opposing this, and if eventually every sewage treatment plant opposes it, maybe Simcoe County will wake up. Simcoe County, as you've heard, has failed to comply with the Freedom of Information request for a groundwater impact survey model. That's what it is. It's a model. It's some kind of prediction. It doesn't really tell you anything. This is a clear, though, violation of our rights to open access to information that was paid for with our own taxpayer dollars. It tells us that there is something in that report that raises concerns about the impact of this dump site on groundwater supplies. We can only speculate on what those concerns are, but what comes to mind is not good. While the county thinks that the positive water pressure will prevent leachate from getting into the groundwater, once the level of groundwater is lowered for the site, will local supplies also be lowered? So adjacent property owners, including farmers, will not have any water supply? We all know that climate change will do to our water supplies. Fortunately, we currently are in a cooler, wet period. But once we hit the long heat wave and drought cycle that we're now experiencing out west and in Europe, then what will happen at this site? You can be sure that that positive water supply will turn to a negative pressure, and the leachate will go directly into groundwater supplies. Simcoe County needs to seriously go back to the drawing table and start all over by looking at new technology. That air emission discharge standards are far more rigid in this province than discharge for sewage treatment plants to surface and groundwater supplies, such as what will happen from this site. The reason they cannot ship the leachate to Lake Simcoe is simply because Lake Simcoe's standards for discharge are much higher than they are for Georgian Bay. The Ontario Ministry of Environment has the same discharge standards for Georgian Bay as they have for Lakes Ontario and Lake Erie. In other words, until Georgian Bay water quality deteriorates to the level of Lake Erie, anybody can discharge any amount of contaminants, including leachate, run through sewage treatment plants straight into Georgian Bay. Our organization has been asking for a long time for those sewage treatment, those water quality treatment standards to be raised for Georgian Bay, and so far we've been unsuccessful. Simcoe County needs to look at other options that include aggressive reduce, reuse, and recycle. An incinerator in this county, then every item that went into it would have to be checked. and the technology is here and now to remove contaminants from emissions and generate some electricity. But once a hole in the ground is dug, there are very few restrictions that prevent contaminants from entering the site and getting into groundwater and eventually to Georgian Bay. So my message here today is for Premier McGuinty. Stop this dump site from proceeding. Do the right thing for the environment, and generations to come will thank you. Thank you.
Garfield Dunlop, you know him. He's just supplied us with 100 blank petitions to support his ongoing private members bill, of course, at Queen's Park. That's circulating around. So if you see it, you'll know what it is, and you'll probably know what you want to do. Okay?
Sign it!
Yeah, well, I figured that was pretty obvious, didn't you?
Give it to Tony.
I have to tell you something about Steve. I've had him on my show so many times I had to give him a title. So the title I gave him was Leader of the Peace-Loving Rebel Forces in Tiny Township. He squirms a little when I say that, but I think it's appropriate. Steve has been working on this project for so many years, you've probably forgotten by now. And his head is full of all kinds of statistics and information. And of course, he's at the head of the battle to get that information released by Simcoe County that supposedly shows this is such a swell place for a dump site. We still want to see that information. Steve, what would you like to tell us?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you all for coming out. Secondly, I'd like to just tell you what I just did. I got interviewed by CBC News World. And that was live, so I'm out there across Canada. And I'd like to think that of all the technical things I do know and studied, I'm going to just say that by doing that one interview, just ratchets, so ratchets like a sailboat, it's ratcheted the sail up a little higher to catch more wind so we can fight Site 41. So that's as technical as I want to get when I'm talking to you right now. What I want to really say is I've been asking for people to stand up. Well, I think that happened. And when people were standing up, they started joining together. And here it is. We're joined together. When I was being interviewed, the police camera truck was right there filming me, so I got filmed double. Now, just so you know it, I keep hearing from the county it's a done deal. So that all started that was George MacDonald, the mayor of Midlands line. It's a done deal. And now, of course, anybody who attaches themselves to the positive side, or the side that we're going to have a dump and it's not going to leak, they're mostly gone now. George MacDonald lost in his bid for the mayor of Midland quite handily. And in fact, a number of mayors in Simcoe County have went down in flames because they thought they could believe the experts. And so we say, well, who are the experts? I don't know. All I know is they've got me in all their legal stuff saying, I know it all. And I'm so organized, they don't want me to have any more information because I'm really good at fighting dumps. So I'm like, wow, that's pretty good. So I don't think I got a PhD or whatever all those letters are. But I do understand that if you put garbage in water, it will eventually cause us some distress, and you're not likely going to drink it. And even if the Ministry of the Environment says, we're happy, it'll meet B7 reasonable use guidelines, which, whatever that means, it means that they can pollute the water on the site by 50% without it breaking the law. And that means they can pollute the water next door on the fence line by 49.99999, and it doesn't break the law. So it should suggest to us all that we've got source water protection, we got the Clean Water Act, we got Walkerton, we got Perkinsfield. We're on top of it. Our politicians must have forgot the Premier of the province in 1986-87 promised they would absolutely clean up the Posey landfill site. Yeah. They promised. The Premier Peterson promised. He must have forgot. I mean, things got busy for him. So we've already polluted enough land and water in this township that we should just stop putting garbage in holes, because when we put them in holes, it means we don't have to come up with a solution. We don't, because we got another hole we can pile it in. Site 41, if it were ever to be approved, would become the largest landfill site in Ontario, because they would just keep growing. And I can tell you that when we were going through the environmental assessment hearings in 1989, there was a sister environmental assessment taking place in Halton and Milton, and it got approved quite handily. And that dump is already full. They've expanded it once, and they're getting ready to expand again. But the C of A, which is the holy grail of the MOE, said this is the size. But once you have a C of A, they can do anything they want with it. Anything. They just keep making it bigger and better. So we have to make sure that the C of A that's been issued for Site 41 becomes historic, because we're going to stop it. We're just going to say, turn it off. Over the last few years, we've had 3 different environmental ministers, and they've all said the same thing. We are there to protect our environment, and they've encouraged by personal letter to the county to explore new and emerging technologies. The county would have you believe they've done that. I don't think so. I don't think they've done that. I think they want you to believe they've done everything they can to do so. They really haven't. And they haven't let us in. And they promised they would be, the ministry promised they would be, try to remember this, transparent, fair, and objective. So now we have the people of Tiny Township and beyond in Simcoe County saying, woo, we want a better way. Is it going to cost more? Maybe, but not likely, because the cost of polluted water is priceless. We now have, and we all know it now, the cleanest, purest water that's ever been measured on Earth. So why would we want to threaten that? Is there somebody who had a good reason to do that? I love to talk about Site 41. The County of Simcoe says it's perfect. The MOE says it's perfect. We've reviewed it all. And how is it that the calibrated mod flow, which everybody here goes, what is a calibrated mod flow? Well, it's a model. They determine the weather. It's going to rain tonight. It's going to blow in the morning. Maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. But that's what they used to make sure this site was good. They checked all the numbers and they modeled it. However, the scientists for the ministry have never seen the calibrations. So they have to take on blind faith what Jager Hymns Limited has said to them. And they have. They said, it looks okay, it's going to be okay. Well, in my books, when I go and ask for it and they won't give it to me. And the Community Monitoring Committee, which was established by the Certificate of Approval to do reviews, is denied. And then we go through Freedom of Information, spend 22 months to get an order to get it, and then the Jager Hymns Limited, which has been bought out by Genevar, says, no way, you're not going to get it. Should we be a little suspicious? Just a little bit? So I'm thinking that the Premier of Ontario and those 32 councillors have no choice but to say, let's have a look. Let's have a look. Because they say there's water in the upper aquitard. I told you I wouldn't talk that way, but I have to. Just a little bit, in that upper aquitard. But I'm in the hole and there's no water there. And I'm like, geez, it should be right at my nose. It should be right here. There's no water. Shouldn't I be suspicious? They tell me I know what I'm talking about. I think that we need to inform you and give you that information so that when you're standing up and you're joining hands, you're gonna spread out and you're gonna touch other people's hands. And we're gonna make it so easy for those politicians to change their mind, because it'll make them look great. And we're gonna have a new era in Canada. No new dumps.